Hello everyone, my name is Jill Reagan. I am the owner here at Whispering Willow Farm and I'm so glad you all could join me today. Today's video is all about my must-have seed starting supplies. And let me tell you, it's not a very long list. I've been growing food for over a decade. I have literally bootstrapped every idea, every way to start seeds, transplants, and everything, you name it. And I've found through the years that if you can set a budget on the front end, be efficient with the supplies that you're buying, you don't need a lot. The best part is it's a one-time investment, and then you can have those things year after year, season after season, and it's well worth it. So I will say on the front end of this, I'm going to be real honest and real transparent, and I'm going to tell you some things that might be a little controversial, but I'm saying it because I really do believe that it's true. And if you're trying to max out a tiny space and you're trying to be super efficient with your systems, that also means being super efficient with the tools and supplies you have on your farm. So while you can use red Solo cups or egg cartons or yogurt containers to start your seeds, that's not what I'm going to recommend to you guys. One, they're not going to last. About after that first season, you go to transplant those red Solo cups out into your garden, they're going to break and you can't use them anymore. If you are working in a really tiny space, those red Solo cups are going to take up a ton of space. So there is a more efficient way to do this. Will they work? Absolutely. Are they setting you up for success season after season? Not really. You know, egg cartons, yes, they'll work. They're going to dry out quickly. You're not going to be able to have super established root systems because they're very shallow. So while it will work, I really want to teach you guys the systems and the efficiency you need to set your farm up for the best success, to have the best transplants of your life and grow the most abundant gardens that you've ever grown. So I want you to know I'm not hating on those things. I also have used yogurt containers and red Solo cups, but I used up so much space that I didn't have. I didn't really have super healthy transplants. I wasted a lot of soil, and I found that there's a better way to do things. So in our small greenhouse here, we are starting thousands and thousands of seeds. Last week alone, I started over 800 seeds, and because of how I chose to start those seeds, I was able to get most of those on about 6 10 by 20 flats. That's pretty impressive. If you think about 800 Solo cups, y'all, you have to have a lot of room. So keep that in mind when I'm telling you these things. It's all about being efficient. It's all about working in a small space because that's what we have here. And I'm hoping that some of these things stick out to you and you think, oh yeah, I can totally do that. And some of these techniques I really think are going to blow your mind because they have been game changers for me here on my farm. So let's dive in. So first up, I'm going to share with you guys some soil blocks that we use here on our farm. Now I have just recently moved all of my seedlings inside under grow lights because we are expected to have some crazy snow and I can't justify heating my entire tunnel for just a few trays worth of things. And so we went ahead and moved that inside, and I also wanted to show you guys what that setup looked like if you didn't have a greenhouse. If you do have a greenhouse, that's great. You just want to make sure that you are keeping it above freezing in here, and that's not really worth it to me for the plants that we started. But first up, we have this handheld mini 20, and you guys can see here are 20 little bitty blocks, and they have these divots in here, so they're going to create these really cool holes that make it really easy for you to plant. Now, this is nice if you are limited on space. You can start almost everything in these small little handheld 20 trays. The downfall of this is that you are going to have to up pot them. So we are starting things like our tomatoes and our peppers in these small little mini 20s. And then we will up pot them into this handheld 4. And you can see here, it's got the block in it, so that 20 soil block will just fit directly into this. And then we'll up pot this into our big single. And then it will stay in here until we transplant it out into the greenhouse. This is what we do for all of our tomatoes and our peppers. Now, I have been getting asked a lot, why would you up pot? What's the point in that? And it's a really good question. If you're limited on space, it's a really nice option because some of these things like our lettuce, we could keep in these small little mini 20s and then transplant out, so you're saving space there. Also too, if you start something like a tomato, which you totally can, this will be another option I tell you. Say you keep your tomato in this 2.5 inch pot for 12 weeks. You're just going to need to add nutrients because more than likely over that 12-week span, you are depleting all the nutrients out of the soil, and you're probably going to start to see some deficiency in your plants. And so by potting up, it is more tedious, and so I don't think it's a great method for everyone. but you're up potting into new soil continuously, adding all those new nutrients back into your soil. So we do, you know, a good mix. If I'm real honest, my husband does not like the soil blocks. He thinks it's super time consuming, but it does allow us to condense down on space, and we have really good transplants because of it. So everything I'm listing and mentioning here today, I will put down in the description for you guys. So if you're already like, you know what, the soil block is too much work, what you're going to do is you're going to mix soil and water together in some sort of tote. We just use a Rubbermaid tote. You're going to compact it all down, form it in those blocks, and then you're just going to push and release it. I'll show you guys all that inside. But if that seems too tedious to you, which I get it, it can be. One of the main reasons we are using soil blocks is because we are limited on space. I do think it is a must-have if you are limited on space, because it's a game changer how much you can crank out in a very small compacted space. So it is still on my must-have seed starting list. But one thing that we're going to be using a lot this year are these air pruning trays from Bootstrap. So this is a 72 cell, which is fantastic. And it has these slits on the side, and these slits are going to act just like a soil block, right? They're going to allow that air to come in. They're going to create healthy transplants. They're not going to be root bound, because you can see this massive hole in the bottom. And so this acts just like a soil blocker, except it's 72 cell, and I can keep everything in here from seeding to transplant, which is really nice. I'm about to start a whole bunch of ornamental grasses in here. I'm going to start all of my flowers in here. And so I think that this is a really good option. And then 72, what if you're not even growing 72 plants? You could break this up into sections and label accordingly, and you could just have one tray that is everything you need for your garden. So with these, you could use those 10-20 shallow trays from Bootstrap Farmer. So I will tell you from experience, I have bought cheap trays from cheap companies, and they have broken down with the sun. They have cracked by the time I move them out into the field to transplant. And for me, these last. I've had some of these literally for years and years and years. And so it's worth it to me to take care of my stuff and invest on the front end. So these are just a really good tool to have. You can buy them in packs and get a little bit of a discount too. So one of the ways that I like to use this is you can take this right here, the 1020, and then they have these inlays where you sit it right in here, which is super nice. And then you can take your 2.5-inch pots and just stick them in, which is really nice because it's super easy to move and transplant. You can see nothing's moving here. If you're selling plant starts, this is really nice. It's super compacted, so this is a 32 cell setup, but you can bottom water here. You have your inlays here, so none of your stuff's moving around. And then you can just start certain things. So our squash, our zucchini, our cucumbers, everything like that, we are starting in these 2.5-inch pots, and they are staying in these until they're transplanted out into the field. Here we have some of our summer solstice collection. They come in a lot of fun colors, but you can buy these depending on what you're wanting to do, in bigger sizes too. These are the 2.5-inch, but this system here, it's super clean. And again, if you're limited on space, you can really kind of max out what you want to do. You've got a tray designated to one thing. For me, I like to use this when I'm selling plants too, because it's super easy to transport. It's also really easy just to take from the greenhouse or your house outside and, you know, transplant them. And so for me, this whole setup is just really appealing because it makes my job super easier, because everything's just super durable. It just makes a lot of sense for us. So another thing I like to have on hand, depending on what you're growing, are these little shallow 5x5 trays, and then the deep 5x5. So most people would be starting microgreens in these, and so if that's something that you're wanting to do microgreen, I think these are a must-have because you can just use them. They have little humidity domes that go over them as well. And then here we have the deep ones. Well, I know some people who will take these 5x5 trays because they're super condensed, and they'll heavily seed them with a basil or a tomato. And then when they've all sprouted, they will thin them out and up pot them into, you know, these 2.5-inch trays that they're gonna live in until they go out into the garden. And so again, each of these are gonna be great options depending on the scale that you're doing it at, and also depending on the space that you have. And then with these little 5x5 trays, they make these really nice little trays that they just sit in perfectly. So there's really something for every need. I feel like I've used all of these. I do implement all of these. Our microgreens, you know, if we're just doing them for the family, I really like to just have these small little containers. It works really nicely. So along with the air pruning trays, Bootstrap does have a lot of trays that are like 50 or 72 cell. Really, durability is what you're looking for here. If you buy cheap trays, they're gonna fall apart, they're not gonna last, and then you have wasted your time, money, and energy. And the truth is, nobody wants to do that. Nobody has time to do that. So while you can go down to your hardware store and buy something, it's not gonna last. And for me, I've learned that I've wasted more money buying cheap things again and again and again versus just investing in the right things the right time. So everything we have here, all of our trays, they're all from Bootstrap Farmer because we trust them. I've had their stuff for a really long time. I know the durability's there. I've literally put them through the ringer. And so you guys are going to have to evaluate that and figure out, you know, where you want to put your money and just really make sure you have those good, efficient systems in place. And so this is what we're doing. We really enjoy it. Another thing I want to talk to you guys about are drop seeders. Now, you know, there's a few things you need to be successful at seed starting. One, you need quality seeds, which is actually really important. If you don't have quality seeds, then there's no need to have all the supplies. So I'll put some of my favorite seed companies down below. You need a good quality soil medium. You don't want to spend, you know, your time and your money getting the best soil blocks or the best trays and then put crummy soil in there and you have really bad transplants. And so make sure that you've got a light, fluffy, you know, soil medium, something that's got perlite, vermiculite in it. Think light, fluffy, no mulch, no heavy bark, because that's going to disturb those roots as they begin to develop and grow. And you don't want that. Another thing to think about too when you're buying soil or maybe you're creating your own is, you know, read the label, read the ingredients. Is there a fertilizer in there or are you going to have to add something? So let's say, you know, that you have your tomatoes, your peppers, your cucumbers, whatever, in this small tray. You are probably going to have to hit it with some sort of fertilizer if your potting mix doesn't have it in there. What we do when we create all of our soil blocks or we, you know, get all of our soil ready is we will take Agri-Grow. It is a prebiotic fertilizer and we'll mix it in. And that way we just have all of our plants, just gives them a good healthy boost throughout the season. And then if we notice that in the greenhouse they start to look a bit deficient, we'll mix this up, maybe some fish emulsion, some bone meal, blood meal, something like that, and we'll just kind of hit it all with it, and you'll be surprised how much that will just boost your plants up in a very short time period. The man of the hour came.
No.
All right, so we're going to talk about drop seeders real quick. And again, I hope you guys know my heart and know that, like, I'm not hating on anybody. If anything, I'm hating on my own self because I did these things for so long. I remember last year, gosh, I can't believe I'm telling y'all the story. I remember last year literally taking a toothpick, dipping it in water, and then picking up all these really delicate Lysiantha seed and transplanting them. If you want to know how long that took me, it took me all daggum day, okay? That is not efficient, and I knew then that there had to be a better way. Like I said, we're starting thousands of seeds, sometimes even, you know, 1,000 seeds a week. If I am hand planting, hand seeding all of those, that's taking me a lot of time. And now, thankfully, Nathan is, you know, working for the farm full time. He was just like, no. Like, you know, Nathan's got some big paws. He is not about to be hand seeding this very, very small lettuce seed or spinach or even our flowers and our herbs. You know, think about eucalyptus or lavender. They are these tiny, tiny, tiny specks. And so we knew we were going to have to get way more efficient with seeding because Nathan was like, no way, and I knew that that was not something I wanted to do, was spend hours and hours in a greenhouse seeding. And so we really invested in drop seeders this past year on our farm. They have been a game changer. I'm actually going to show them to you and then show you how they work because they are pricey, but I promise you it's going to cut down your time so much that if you're thinking about paying yourself or paying someone else in labor, you've more than covered the cost just with like the seeder.
Yep.
All right, so these I'm hoping are easy to show you. These are from Mindful Farmer. I will tag them down below. But here you just kind of have this base plate, and it's kind of hard to show you because it's clear, but you can see all these holes in it. And then the kit comes with different interchangeable little blocks here, depending on what you're seeding. It also comes with a guide that tells you if you're growing this, put this number block. You have a 6mm, you have a 4.5mm, we've got a 2.8mm, and a 1.5, and this is just dependent on the seed. So each of these obviously are smaller and bigger. And so, babe, I'm gonna let you grab the camera and I'm gonna kind of show them what this looks like. So I have put this 6 on here. You can see it's just magnetic. What you're gonna do is take your seeds and fill this top part up here. So I have got spinach seeds. I know it's a little bit bigger.
There you go.
All right, so here I have my handheld 20. I've made the soil block right here. I'm gonna take the 4.5 plate and stick it on here. You can see it's magnetic. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna fill your seeds in the top here. So I've got spinach. I know it's a little bit a bigger seed. So I've got it up here at the top. All you're gonna do is just give it a little bit of a shake. And you can see all those seeds are just falling in all of those holes. Once they've done that, you move everything back to the top so you guys can see here where they're all lined up. You're gonna go over your soil block, and all you're gonna do is just push down. You guys can see when I did that, it seeded all of these. It seeded about 2 per cell, which is kind of what we want. We multi-seed when it comes to our lettuce and our spinach, cover it up with dirt, and that's it. So what would have originally taken me a minute to hand seed 2 or 3 seeds, I literally did with the click of a finger. So the great thing is he is working on a 32. So here we have, this is the 35 stand-up soil blocker. And so we went ahead and made these, and I'm gonna show you guys what that looks like as well. All right, so here we have the 35, again, different plates. If you've got that 35 stand-up soil blocker, you would put your seeds in here, shake them around, it fits directly over it, you do a quick click, and here you've seeded 35 soil blockers in like 2 seconds. So I actually timed myself the other day because I wanted to see how efficient we were being on the farm. And I ended up seeding 800 plants in less than 3 minutes. And that was putting everything in here, walking through all of them, and covering soil back on it. You guys, that is really impressive. And if you're talking about cutting labor costs, you're talking about just being more efficient in the greenhouse on your farm, for me, that's worth it, because how long would it have taken me to hand seed 800 plants? Especially these were my lavender, my eucalyptus, y'all. It would have taken me a really, really long time to do that. And so I think that these drop seeders are really good if you're trying to be an efficient small-scale grower, even if you're just a backyard gardener. Say maybe you're like Nathan and it's just really hard for you to hand seed these little things. This investment is interchangeable. It's gonna last you forever. It's worth it on the front end to buy these things. It's just gonna set you up for success in your greenhouse and out into your gardens. Alright, so I want this video to be applicable no matter what scale garden you are. So those Mindful Farmer drop seeders work really well for Nathan and I because, like I mentioned, we are starting hundreds and even thousands of plants a week. However, I know some of you guys aren't doing that. And so I'm going to head inside, show you another hand seeding option that will still save you time. There are some pros and cons to it. It is a bit cheaper, and there are some things that still need to be worked out. But we're going to head inside. I'm going to show you that, and I'm also going to show you our setup and the must-have seed starting supplies if you are growing indoors. Alright, so I'm back in the house. Now I'm going to share with you guys another drop seeder option. This one is going to be a lot cheaper, but it's not as efficient in my opinion. So this came from Johnny's Seeds, and it's around $10. And essentially what you do is you'll put all your seeds here in this little circle, and then there's a dial. And you'll change the dial, and each opening will be a different size depending on the seed that you're trying to seed. Now, this is at a cheaper price point, so it's not going to be, you know, as fancy as the one I just showed you. But what you'll do is you'll go through and you'll tap and you'll seed. Now, I actually used this one this week just to have a good comparison for you guys. What I didn't like is that there's no stopper. When I started seeding my pelleted lettuce, you know, a ton of them were coming out at once, and I ended up having to go back in and reseed. But if you think that this will help you, it is another hand seeding option that's going to be a lot cheaper, but probably just not as efficient. So look around, see what's going to work best for you. I still think if you're growing a really large garden and you're starting a lot of seeds, having some sort of hand seeder or a drop seeder is going to be crucial in the efficiency on your farm and for your garden. So now that we are back inside, I'm going to share with you what our indoor grow light setup looks like. So you are going to need some sort of rack. So here we have a 5-tier shelf that we bought at Home Depot. I'll try to find it and link it for you guys. And we have just got some really cheap grow lights here. These are the T8 grow lights. I think they're 45 watt. I actually had a really nice grow light that was on a dimmer. They had the chains, and since we don't actually utilize growing seeds inside very much anymore, I ended up giving it away to my friend. And so we were able to get these, and I'm going to turn the camera around and kind of show you what it looks like. So we have got zip ties, which is not ideal. I would recommend getting some sort of chain. However, when we gave away all of our grow lights, we gave away the whole system. And so we have just got these, and we've got it hovered pretty close. And as these start to sprout and grow, we will just go up here and we will tighten these zip ties, which will move the grow lights higher and higher. And this is really all you need, some sort of rack. I do recommend these metal racks if you're wanting to use this system year after year. If not, and you just have a few seeds, you can use a coffee table or a table. So these are the full spectrum LED grow lights, 42 watts. This is the brand. These are really cheap and they all just connect, which is really nice. And what we're about to do is put a heat mat on these. But you can see here, we've only got a couple shelves utilized right now. But some grow lights, a rack, and a heat mat, and you are good to go. All right, so now I'm going to talk to you about heat mats. Really, the purpose of a heat mat is to warm up your soil so those seeds will germinate. So we don't utilize a heat mat often. Usually we have them in the greenhouse until seeds have germinated, and then we pull it. And when we have this set up in the greenhouse, we have a timer set up on it. And so essentially the timer is set up on a temperature, and once the greenhouse reaches a certain temperature, the timer alarms the heat mat and shuts it off, which is really nice. It just makes things more efficient. That way I'm not having to go out in the greenhouse, figure out, you know, if it's too hot, unplugging it. So we've got all that really automated. And for us, since we are growing a ton, I'm gonna have Nathan unwrap this. This is a 5-foot heat mat, which is super, super nice. So if you knew you were only gonna be able to grow one tray worth, instead of buying a bunch of those small ones, we've got this Sun Pro here, and we just put center blocks on either side, and you guys can see here, I mean, this thing is massive. And so we only need a couple of these to be able to, you know, heat up a ton of trays of seedlings. And so really, if you had to choose between light or heat, light's gonna be more crucial. The heat's just nice to kind of help warm up the soil to speed up germination, specifically with those summer loving things. Like we always do this with our tomatoes and our peppers and our eggplants, but usually we're not putting a heat mat on, you know, our cold season things like our spinach and our lettuce and brassicas and things like that. So this is one of those must-haves. It's always nice to have on hand, but if you're kind of playing around with a budget and you have to choose between grow lights or maybe a heat mat, or if you're having to choose between quality trays or a heat mat, I would say heat mat is one of those things that it's not 100% necessary to be successful at seed starting, but it is nice to have on hand because it can kind of boost things along. All right, you guys, that is it. Like I mentioned, there's not a long list here. Quality seeds, quality soil, drop seeders, durable trays. If you're working inside, you're gonna need a grow rack and some grow lights, and that's it. But the cool thing is that you can get this list, you can have these things on hand, and you can be growing seeds successfully year after year, and you're not having to replace equipment. You're not having to replace trays that broke on you. You're not having to buy new grow lights because you bought the cheapest of the cheap. If you just spend the money on the right things, I promise you will be glad that you did it on the back end when you have healthier transplants. You're not having issues mid-season or even having unhealthy transplants that you are putting out into your garden. So I hope this video is helpful. Like I mentioned, I will have the links to everything down below where you guys can go check them out. I even have a few discount codes for you guys on some of this stuff, so make sure you're checking out the links. But thank you all for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you soon.